Hello viewers, I'm SB and welcome back to Pyre. Today we're just going to be reading the Book of Rites, talking about, lore. So if you are not down for like 40 minutes of background information, you've been warned. Unfortunately, we ended the game with like 15 or 20 pages still missing from our book. But I discovered that if you play the game in True Nightwing, the difficulty that's unlocked by finishing the game once, you start with a completed Book of Rites. So that's what we have here, what we are holding in our virtual and invisible hands here, a completed book. I did note which pages were missing, so we can, when we get to them in the book, we can probably guess why we were missing them. My suspicion is it'll be pretty straightforward. And I think we're just going to start at the beginning. We've read the entire first chapter previously, because those are the pages that we were handed over the course of the beginning half of the game. But I figure it'll be good for me to refresh for context, because I certainly do not remember all of it. So I guess let's just get going here. To the foreword, a formal welcome undersigned by the 8 scribes. You, dear reader, are an exile of the downside, such as we, the 8 who wrote the Book of Rites. That you possess it and have capacity to glean its words is testament enough to your potential. So, literacy... this is something that I'll go back and clear up. I guess I'm not 100% clear on when literacy became illegal. Was literacy illegal during the time that the scribes lived? Was the writing of this book itself an act of rebellion, sort of? Or is it just that literacy was uncommon then? I'll straighten things out before the final thoughts video. Thus we reveal a path from this forsaken place to freedom, a homecoming in glory. The stars themselves shall be your guide. Ere the turning of the year's first solstice, seek the nearest longitude beneath the brightest of 8 as they align as shown. Arrive as a triumvirate clad in the raiments of the rites bearing this book, and oblige the voice that tells you more. So the voice thing was already in place. Obviously, Brighton wasn't the first Archjustice. My understanding of the history of this is worse than I thought it was. The book will probably help a little bit. So the first chapter is written by Gol-Golathanian. Each of the chapters is written by a different scribe. So here we have Gol-Golathanian, the Master General. You know perhaps the thrice-cursed name of Solium Mur, the Emperor of Sar, the first exile, and my liege. This chapter concerns him and those who found him in the downside. Each of us was sent to take his life, such was the hatred for him in and around his country. Yet we found in Solium Mur a man transformed, in body, mind, and spirit, a man deserving of much more than mercy. In time he named us all his scribes, and he became the 8th. It is my greatest honor now to share with you his deeds. To know his story is to know the rites. I dig the illustrations, too. How many nations did I scour in the name of Solium Mur? How many countries fell before our spears and blades? Such questions mattered less to me with every passing victory. Our legions swelled across the land, and our dominion grew. The Emperor Solium Mur paid all this little heed. He only tended to his personal affairs. Our legions relished the autonomy. We did not know that the Emperor cared nothing for his legions nor his people. He cared only for that which was before him. One day he learned of such a thing as to befit his name, and vowed to seek it out. I knew it was a fool's errand, but my liege he would not listen. He instead insisted to pursue a certain treasure, a celestial orb, freshly fallen from the heavens in the reaches of the downside. He would be a living legend if only he could grasp it, whispered in his ear that Kaelmer Ropecaller, his elder and most trusted aide. Would that I slew that man myself. His was a simple and yet brilliant ruse, to draw the Emperor farther still from his responsibilities and towards his greed. Thus did the Emperor begin an expedition into the Forsaken Lands. He insisted that he go himself. It was not long before the Empire began to crumble. With my liege gone, his own country quickly turned upon itself. I must admit that this collapse had started long before the Emperor's disappearance. his decision to give chase after a myth but hastened the inevitable. All the while, the rope-caller stood by, awaiting such a time as he could rule in my liege's stead. He would be our people's savior. His first charge was to organize a search for the missing Solium Myrrh. Warriors, pathfinders, and scholars heard the call and prepared to seek him out. The Emperor Solium Myrrh knew naught of this, of course. His expedition yielded not the treasure he desired, but brought him closer to his country than he had ever been before. As he traveled down the river Sclorian in pursuit of greed, he found instead an inkling of shame. He saw the sunken faces of his people, heard their words for him. In time, he could not ignore it, and it proved more than he could bear. The river finally claimed him, his belongings, and his retinue. Once the people heard, I understand they cried with joy. Perhaps he ought to have perished, but the mercy shown to him, I think, is what transformed him. My emperor lay there, bleeding and alone, stranded in a bitter land beyond the river. With fleeting consciousness, he understood the folly of his quest, and the folly of his rule over his country. Thus did he await the last embrace. It was the Imp Haub that nursed him back to health, and warned him often of the dangers he would have to face. Many enemies of Myrrh would come in search for him, some under employment by the rope collar, some longing openly for cold, uncomplicated vengeance. I was one of them. I plunged into the river willingly. We needed to be sure that he was dead. Emperor Myrrh. Scarcely could I recognize him when at last I found him. A half-starved animal, horns sprouted from his head, a bestial mirror of his blackened reputation. And I, a man who conquered countries, feared my emperor then in such a way as I had never known. My charge had been to slay this man, but when I discovered him, he was already fighting for his life. The little imp Haub proved of little help against the Sisters of the Arch, whose entire lives were culminating in this instant. The Sisters of the Arch, that's Sandra, right? That's Sandra and her people. I was unable to watch. My heart ached with such pity for the man, and for the love I felt for him when I had served him, that I sprang to his defense. The Imp Haub and we helped to save my emperor, and when the danger did subside, my emperor Solium Myrrh, he said something to me, which shook me to the essence of my being. He said, "You gave your freedom, Master Golathanian, so that I may yet have mine. You, too, now are an exile of the downside. In all the days which I have left, I never could repay the mercy you have shown me. So, if I cannot do so in this life, then I shall do it in the next." We crossed the land together, and, together with the imp, we gained the company of those who saw in him what I did. So, the downside is already known. The exile is already known. The scribes created the way of getting back, is my current understanding. At the time, exile was irreversible, but also the Commonwealth didn't yet exist. Solium Myrrh was the emperor of the Empire of Sar. So I guess the part that I'm not clear on is when the Commonwealth happened and how exactly, but I bet it's in here. Also, I bet I was told during the game and I just forgot. We found each of the others in due time, by fate, not by coincidence. The wise Liu Sclorian stood among the trees, gazing at the stars, expecting us. The wild witch Melith was so enthralled by my liege's utter transformation, she stayed her sorceries. Blessed-born Triesta swooped down upon us, but to warn of an imminent attack. The many-maned Jomur thus intervened, and shared with us his humor and his hunt. Even the Underking Oris himself sought out an audience with us. Thus we became the Eight, and journeyed on together. There's some parallels here, right? One could say that the wise Volfred stood among the trees, gazing at the stars, expecting us. Certainly, Tamitha swooped down upon us, but to warn of imminent attack. I wish to be remembered not for boastfulness. Thus, I refrained from detailing our exploits across the land, save to say that they were numerous. Know that only through our combined strength of arms and wit did we withstand the savage land. Such were the monstrous dangers that it posed. I came to see that all the terrors which I heard at bedside in my youth were based entirely in fact. So great they were, they blotted out the sky. Such was the evil that we vanquished, but the remnants of it yet shine under the stars. And, in the end, it was the stars which guided us toward our truest calling. We rid the land of an impending doom, but faced another of its kind. Or we knew that we were trapped. Yet, for each danger which we faced, for every failed ambush by Arch, we met with gentle souls and kindred spirits in the downside, who deserved more than to fade from memory within this land. It was then the stars themselves showed us the way, delineating a great voyage across the sea. Near broken we became, but then, at last, a moonlit vision, that of the Rites, the Rites. Thus shall they say of us, the 8 scribes gave their freedom, so that we may yet have ours. Okay, that's the end of Chapter 1. I'm not 100% sure that I actually did read this far. I think I may have given up even earlier than that. Okay, this chapter is written by Jomure Manymane, the Alpha Chief, and in this chapter we're missing the last 3 pages, I believe. So we'll take note of that when we get there and see if we can't guess at why. Once I, too, roamed free. I remember well those days, in which I was called chief. I traveled all the world over on my 4 good paws, and I was well adored. I wanted to grow stronger. Here, at last, I have. I shall not mince my words. This place shall either harden you or kill you. It shall haunt you with old memories. You share the exile's plight. My charge is to alleviate the sting of it for you a little bit, and to prolong your stay, but only for as long as needed. Your charge is to return. We call this place the downside for a reason. But in time, here you can learn to eat, to seek out shelter, and to find a certain beauty in unlikely places. I don't know, I feel like a very large percentage of the place is beautiful. You cannot survive the downside if you cannot get around. Howlers shall descend on you, or tempests shall shear you to pieces. That is just the way of it. Traveling through the environs is no simple feat. Consider yourself blessed if you were born a cur. If not, however, you shall have to find a means to cross these lands without the benefit of 4 strong paws. Deus Glorian believes this untamed land can be traversed through means unnatural. I thought at first that he meant sorcery, but he suggests invention. He speculates that carriages could cross the land by harnessing its fury, a wild thought. In my case, my paws shall suffice. In my defense, given this font, that totally could say any, right? And in any case still works. I know of no polite way to describe the climate here. It oppresses every living thing except, perhaps, the native flora in a few specific areas. Once more, the recommended course is to keep moving. Moving keeps you warm when it is cold, or, when it is very hot, you use what strength you can to move to somewhere you can think and breathe. The weather in the downside seems intrinsic to the different regions, which my good friend Molten Melith shall describe. Shelter can be difficult to find, and you cannot stay in it for very long. Perhaps, however, shelter can accompany you, rather than constrain you. How to sustain oneself with food and drink in such a place as this? The less said of it, the better. Do not complain. Observe. And, above all, keep moving. Sources of sustenance avail themselves to those with keener sense. In warmer climates, search the ground at break of day for subterraneans. In colder places, dig for them. Give them purpose. That's a gentle way to put that. Drinking pools are rare, but moisture in abundance outside of the sandfolds. Wait a minute. Drinking pools are rare, but moisture in abundance outside of the sandfolds. There's a verb missing here, it feels like. Some is poisonous. Take only what you need. The downside limits any opportunity for excess, but it provides enough amenities to meet the needs of life. One who withstands it cannot help but feel a sense of gratitude. So, this is about survival in the downside, and it's implied to us that it's a very dangerous place, but honestly, you don't get a great sense of that over the journey, I feel like. We ran into a lot of situations, to be sure, but aside from the Deathless Tempest, we rarely had problems that were problems with the downside itself. We mostly had problems with the people in the downside, I feel like. Maybe I'm not remembering, but... Ailments in the downside often give no warning when they strike. Those who keep moving and make no attempt to settle, they reduce their risks. The afflictions come in multiple varieties. In the bogs of flagging hands, a pallor tends to sink into the skin, and then into the mind. Oh, that's true, we did experience that. The nauseating Sea of Solace north of there is difficult for some to tolerate. Very hot or very cold environs bring their own specific side effects. My coat is not as lustrous now. My fangs are long. Like all aspects of the downside, all these ailments share a purpose, to test your body, mind, and spirit. They only appear to harm. Accept them, surpass them, move on. There's a simple pleasure to be found in foraging about this place. Easy for a cur to say, of course. Though barren-looking to the naked eye, the downside has its share of semi-hidden treasures waiting to be found. It was a nose for treasure, after all, which drew us here. Certain types of artifacts found in this place would fetch a reasonable sum in Sol, whether because they shine with inner light, or due to other special properties. I have observed that stardust, freshly fallen from the heavens, sometimes glimmers in the afternoons. I have not found a use for it as yet, although because it brings me faith, perhaps I have indeed. I wonder if it's going to become clear to us what religion was like prior to the scribes forming the rites. Because now, people's religious observances are very focused on the scribes, but one tends to imagine that they had something that they believed in before that. I mean, maybe I'm putting too much weight into the word faith as it's used here, but, you know, I think that makes sense. There are natives in this land with some capacity for thought, and oddly keen instinct for the mercantile. Suspicious creatures, but not disagreeable entirely. From time to time we make exchange with them. They lust for coins, for the imperial sol, though why they do not say. We speculate it is a delicacy. It serves us little purpose here, whilst their slug market wares are sometimes valuable. The creatures appear drawn to places where the heavens shine the brightest, perhaps because they know we are as well. What they want exactly is unclear. We taught them of our lands, yet they remain preoccupied with simpler things. So, Falconron is the descendant of a long line, apparently. It's interesting that they use Sol. Sol is imperial currency. Was the Commonwealth also using Sol? Or is it just that all the coins here are from this period? Special mention must be given to the downside's most prolific native creature, which we call the Imp. With all respects to our comrade Haub, an imp himself, possessing of extraordinary intellect, most imps are driven by the simplest impulses: to eat, to drink, to procreate, to move, and to survive. These creatures, then, are symbols of this place. They are far more resilient than they seem. Though wild by their nature, they, like all of us, can learn. Haub insists that imps are willing to be put to work. Like other aspects of the downside, they wish more than to exist, but to exist with purpose. Survival often is conflated with the physical. When we think of survival, we assume the need to sustain our bodies or improve our bodies. The strong survive. But, and take it from an alpha chief, there are different kinds of strength. The spirit is what drives us. By comparison, the body's impulses are weak. Here in the downside, faith is found in limited supply. Trinkets and mere baubles that would barely fetch a price in our homeland here are talismans. Seek talismans that mean something to you. Hold on to one that you hold dear. It shall reward you with reminders of your faith, your power, your potential. Okay, so these 3 pages, slug markets, indigenous imps, and downside talismans, are the ones that we were missing. And I remember that we were unlocking pages about the dangers of the downside. I'm pretty sure that downside diseases page in particular, we were unlocking them through use of the slug market. So I wonder if sometimes we got no pages from interacting with the slug market, sometimes we got a couple. I wonder if it's like buying stuff, like maybe if you buy a certain number of things from Falcon Ron, you get pages unlocked. So that might be why we were missing a couple of these. Alright, Chapter 3, in the words of Molten Malith, the Wild Witch. Years upon long years we spent distilling life essence from many things, which all once writhed under the auspices of their mortality, which we ourselves cut short. In this we have no regrets, for we learned much, and so, we think, did they. Well, you know. We earned the title Witch, and were forced to flee into the downside. Here we encountered Solium Myrrh, and soon we gained an understanding of each other. He bade us circumnavigate these lands and catalog our findings. We felt a strong desire to expose the secrets of this land. He wished to yield benefit to those who followed in our wake. Indulge us both, then. The downside is connected to our realm via a single artery, the river named for our prestigious sap colleague Lew Sglorian. That river gushes into seeming nothingness. That seeming nothingness turns out, of course, to be the downside. Its existence undermines thousands of years of thought about the composition of our world. The downside's southern edge we call the Sandfolds. It is a desecrated wasteland, speaking well to this land's lack of hospitality. Here, the strength of many who survive the river journey finally fails. If only they could clamber further north, where lies the verdant downside prairie. A better place to perish, to be sure. The downside prairie first appears serene. It is not. Soil there accommodates only the region's brutish native vines and overbrush. The most likely food sources prove poisonous. Thus we journeyed further north. The climate there grew fouler to my senses, though the Kurjomur found it amenable. This sprawling valley, pocked with long evaporated lakes, gives evidence to the monstrosities which roamed this land. We found the region's western edge to be more pleasant on the whole. Therein we found sources of fresh water, whereas over to the east we found the edge of the land's most hideous decay. So this is the kind of stuff I was talking about when I said we didn't really see the danger of the place. We never had to think about food. There was never a concern that we might run out of water, really. We got powerfully bummed out by flagging hands, because it is a total bummer there. But a lot of the danger of the place was obviated by the fact that the existing Nightwings had already sort of conquered it. You know, they'd figured out a system. Headwind knew how to cook. Beyond the valley lies the Flagging Hands, which could be called a swamp if an entire sea could merely be a lake. Soon after our arrival, several of us fell into a dark despair, such were the environs. I found it rather fascinating, though. It held aspects reminiscent of the southern bogs we dwelt in as a tad. We grew accustomed to the dampness of the air, and grew to savor certain twigs and beetles. It can be said the Flagging Hands are an acquired taste, recommendable only for those of our same bent, or perhaps the downside's native imps. The sea surrounded the environs on 3 sides, appearing insurmountable at first. This page, number 51, is the only page in Chapter 3 that we were missing. Beyond a shallow, sickly gulf, our voyages grew increasingly forbidding and much harder to explain. How could a sea exist here at the bottom of the world? We could not deduce whence sprang the carcasses of ancient sailing ships we found throughout the Sea of Solace, though the warnings that they signified we duly noted. That is interesting, that they found a bunch of burned-out ships. Who was here before? It was here we first met Oris, called the Underking, who brazenly assaulted our small skiff, for we had trespassed in his waters. But then the Underking relented, for he witnessed Solium Mur and all his doom and glory. Soon he would side with us. Then, with the Underking, we sailed forth into a tempest beyond reasoning or measure. So yeah, these are about places. I'm assuming the reason we didn't have this page was that we just didn't come back and do enough matches in the sea. We waited for the deathless tempest to subside. We waited, but the Underking, he merely laughed and laughed. But the deathless tempest does not subside. What lies beneath that stretch of sea to cause such an upheaval is best left to myth and speculation. We made passage, nonetheless, through sorcerous aid and fortune, scarce seeing the surrounding environs. We did detect a landform to the west. Solium Mur detected there the presence of the treacherous aide who lured him into exile, and then followed him in turn. Mur, in his wisdom, thought it best to be avoided. At last did we arrive on distant lands, though seeing them provided little comfort. Yeah, Black Basin's not the most pleasant place in the world. The continent we called Black Basin shall one day tear itself apart, arriving upon blackened molten crags tolerable only by the harp Triesta. We pressed onward toward a suffocating wood. This land felt to us somehow primordial. Deep in its roots and noxious crevasses lay innumerable clues as to its ancient history. But we had little time to excavate, for our supplies by then were thin. Further, we were lost. Our best attempts at circumnavigation all had failed. It was Leus Glorian who reached out at last unto the stars, and they revealed the way. Then we at last could see the sacred Mount Elodiel there in the distance. Gaining the summit of the sacred Mount Elodiel involved no small amount of sacrifice and sorcery in varying proportion. The mountain's energies were palpable, the sensation that we felt indescribable. The lands we stood upon were closer to the stars than to the world we knew. It was upon this highest point in all the downside that we first made efforts to concoct this tome, which you now read. It was there that we were stricken with a vision of the cycle of the rites, and felt, together, for the first, a sense of freedom unlike any we experienced before. But that is a subject which our comrades shall illuminate in greater detail, rather. And right now is when they will do that. Alright, in the words of Leus Glorian, I think the voice pronounced his name Yu. In the words of Leus Glorian, 100 Minds, the scholar. Do you feel a kinship with the stars? You owe your everything to them. Perhaps, one day, even your freedom. I chased the stars across the river of my genealogy until they led me here. I demanded they explain to me the paradox of knowledge, for how is it that something can be shared but still contained within ourselves in its entirety? The stars did not respond, but set me on a quest. I sought the 9 landmarks which they revealed to me, so that someday I would reveal their mysteries to you. These landmarks, emissaries of the stars, are 9 lenses through which we see the land, and see ourselves in new light. We're missing one page from this chapter as well, and I bet that it's the page that corresponds with the Sea of, whatever. Already forgotten its name. The serpent titan Gandroth turned to brittle stone not long after his death. Of that you may be certain. What remains is a flat, elevated basin that stands us closer to the heavens. Upon the fallen Gandroth's hide, the stars themselves alight, and you shall know you stand on sacred ground. We set the metal sigils, lit the candle flames, and we emblazoned on the rock-like forms the sigil of our passage to and from this land. And then And then the stars themselves, they did reply to us. They sang, shining bright, their voices loud and clear. We understood their cadence, and we knew how often to return. I oftentimes think the carapace of the Hive Titan Biolanthius shall be an everlasting blemish on an almost splendid bit of land. But Jomur, in his brashness, felled the monster with a certain flair. Then the moon shone through the ridges of the massive carapace and shined upon the pooling ichor, turning it into the freshest nectar ever to be tasted. Do not drink the things that come out of the monsters. I can't believe I have to... Did they never play Shadow of the Colossus? The spring shall flow eternally, and those who walk within it shall experience the resplendent glory of the land. The stars began to fall there in the spring with regularity, and we now know how soon again that they shall do so, and we wish for you to see it for yourself. How ironic that the shattered remnants of the Bone Titan's Shax's Six Shoulders, which once stood vigilant over the archway into flagging hands, remain now as forbidding as when that horrid monster still possessed unnatural life. After little Haub dispatched the Bone Titan in a feat of ingenuity, Shax's pieces fell onto the valley floor, forming a set of standing stones, which Haub marked. Further, traces of the Titan's glacial blood coagulated into perfect frozen drops, which still shimmer in the darkness. Six Shoulders seems to start reanimating when the stars above him dance a certain way. Paint the sigil, then, in the shining light. If there is one celestial landmark in which I would never again wish to tread, unless, of course, the stars beseeched me to, it has to be the Pit. 'Twas dark in there beyond all reckoning. If not for Melith's sorceress lantern, all of us, we all would have been lost. What lies within the Pit is not to be invoked, although I have no doubt our goodly Underking shall be unable to prevent himself from boasting of how Melith sealed it there for an entire age. The thing yet lies there, on the edge of death. Through its connection to the stars, it gives the Pit significance. Walk there with courage and a steady mind. So we didn't really know that much about the Titans, despite the fact that, obviously their imagery is everywhere. It definitely concerns me that this one's not actually dead. I mean, it's a very lays there dreaming sort of thing, and I think even the colors and the art here is supposed to be, I don't know what the proper adjective is for this, Cthulhu-like. Chthonian? Cthulian. It's supposed to suggest a certain elder goddishness, Alright, 69 is the page that we are missing from this chapter, and yeah, the Hulk of Horus. Yep, this makes sense. So we would have gotten this and the page we were missing from the last chapter if we had gone back and done another match or two in the Sea of Solace, I'm sure. Hey, I remembered it. The Dasrabian was first of many river ships to vanish in the downside. Although presumptions of its loss were not inaccurate, the doomed ship and her valiant crew had charted half the Sea of Solace ere the end of their brave voyage. The sea titan Unfathomed Plurnis was not fond of vessels sullying her sea, and split the doomed ship with a single swipe. The ship's own shattered prow would later end the sea titan's cruel reign, as the boastful Underking loves to recount. Yeah, I definitely see echoes of Underking Horus in Sir Gaelman. The stars themselves must have been moved by this. That point within the sea, now sacred, has the stars dancing in homage every now and then. Homage is probably how that word is pronounced. The traitor Kaelmer Ropecaller, whereas he brought about our empire's fall, whereas he nearly claimed the life of our dear Solium. We forgive him. We have forgiven him. We give a certain thanks to him, for he has played a vital part in the Star's plan. If not for him, then we, the Eight, would never have aligned. We never found the Ropecaller. He fled into the sea, towards an isle which we knew well to avoid. 'Twas there, we think, that Kaelmer's tattered mantle finally did him in, among the wild imps. Should the stars ever converge above that isle, It shall be to signify that their long dance across the skies is drawing to a close. So why did Rope Collar follow Myr across? Was Rope Collar exiled by somebody else? Is this something we know? I'm racking my brain here, but I can't remember hearing about why he would be on this side. Also, it's strange that he would end up here, but then solely, that there never would be a face-to-face. It seems like a thing you'd want to put in your narrative. The ashen effigy of the nightmare titan Zilvius Horseheaded looms as dark as ever on the precipices of Black Basin, where her chaotic influence sundered the land itself until it wept with fire. The very instant that our graceful friend Triesta Tithys finally laid to rest the greater titan with the power of the holy scepter of the Empire, the stars shone down upon us all with blinding light. Triesta thought that she could bear her children in the warmth there, but alas. Now the stars revisit that locale with regularity. The fissures in the rock do pose more danger than one ought invite, but a summons to the nest is to be honored. Triesta tried to nest in the corpse of the Titan? Well, it didn't work. That seems like a crazy thing to do to me, but what do I know? I'll tell you this, I'm no expert on the subject of laying eggs. Never have I witnessed an affront to nature, mine and everyone's, quite like the poisoned woods of, boy, does that say limbless Erzek, the root titan, in his suffocating influence. I know that we can press inspect and just get a normal font version of it, but I think that the stylization of this lends something. I shall leave it to the boastful Underking to tell you more of Erzek's vanquishing, whilst I may tell you something of the glade that he protected, which became my own. For my own genealogy now occupies the soil there, and strives forevermore to prevent Erzek from taking root again, by which I assume he means that he spawned saplings there and that they... We don't really know how saps reproduce. Budding, I guess. Something like that. The brambles of the glade are constantly encroaching on themselves, then falling once again to dust. This miraculous cycle, reflected in the starlight piercing through the canopy, needs to be witnessed whenever the stars invite an audience. From the top of Mount Elodiel, the downside may be seen in its entirety, or at least felt, since so much of the land is shrouded. But that is hardly all. Through a wondrous miracle, there lies upon this highest mountain an inverted fall, whose waters crash not toward the sea, but rush toward the heavens. We speculate these are the very waters which delivered us, but now bend backward, seeking their return, as do we all. In this phenomenon can freedom be achieved, but only for the chosen when the time is right. This is a path to freedom we cannot traverse, but shall leave open for you, so that you may strive for it. See, this is... I'm assuming that we're going to get to the part where they talk about how they figured out that you can go past, or whatever it is they did that made it so that you can go past to get back. It seems very odd. Also, I did not realize that the fall of Solium referred to a waterfall, I'm embarrassed to admit, until like the second or third time we were there. I thought it was just like, oh, this is where Solium Myr finally died, or, you know. In my defense, you don't usually think of water going into the sky, you see that and go, oh, it's a waterfall, of course. Much can be said about the Sisters of the Arch, whom we banished to the great beyond for deeds irredeemable. Suffice it that the details of their banishment are written in this book. The sisters and the book became inseparable, not unlike the stars, their light, and the infinite darkness that engulfs them. The stars communicate to us, and you in turn. Wow, that's probably more... The stars communicate to us, and you in turn. I would maybe not punctuate that quite the way that it was done. The words within the book are but an edifice, a simple surface. Look past the text, to the hidden meaning, to the hidden power. The stars above, as they are not mere lights... The stars above, as they are not mere lights, these are not mere words. If you chance upon the Sisters of the Arch within their prison here, give them our thanks. Alright, Chapter 5, The Greater Titans. This is the chapter where we were missing by far the most pages. I was missing like 10 pages here, but I'm certain I know why. Beyond this page, I believe each page in the chapter is unlocked by completing a match with a particular Titan star active. And it's a page for each one of the Titans. You get the page for the Titan whose star that you had active during the match. So that's why we only had a couple of pages, because I only used, I think, 2 Titan stars over the course of the entire game. So here, in the words of Under King Oris, the Sea Sojourner, the stars shine strange beneath the sea. This one dared rise from the waters that he could see them plain, the burning essences of those who came before. Our lives are but a quest to join the stars. This one longed to be the brightest, but in the downside, this one met those whose own stars shall doubtless burn at least as hot. Together we achieved great deeds. You may have seen some evidence of it, the remains of the greater Titans, which once darkened this dark land. But in our kinship was the strength to conquer them. It is this one's humble charge to chronicle those deeds, and may the Titan stars never stain the sky during your time. Is that Indriga? Okay, Indriga. Very stylized G. The boundless sea of Solace and a blackened star are all what remains of the blood Titan Indriga. After this one's exile, he was joined by many of his bravest worm knights, who awakened the blood Titan inadvertently while searching the downside's murky depths. Indriga was most displeased to see her hibernation end, and vowed to 4 ages of torment, on us and on our sea dominion. Our assault was grander than can be described, and lasted days and days and days. The noblest of worm knights fell upon her massive form as waves which dashed themselves against the rocks. Our resolve eventually exceeded hers, and she collapsed into the seas and disappeared. This one alone remained to tell of it. That is, first of all, somewhat less descriptive than I was hoping, as to, the actual nature of her defeat. And secondly, it feels kind of inconclusive to me, right? She went down, and we lost sight of her, and I'm the only person who saw it, and I'm sure everything's fine. Know you the sacred Mount Elodiel, the highest peak within the lowest land? Then know that it is no mere mountain, but the fractured bonework of the World Titan himself, the Archbeast Sungrees. This one's bog-dwelling companion Malith is too mild in her account of our ascent. 'Twas not a pleasant mountain hike, but a pitched battle, spanning 17 full moons. Finally, the 8 of us, we climbed atop the brow of old Sungrees. We merged our strength and struck the mortal blow, such that the Archbeast shattered finally to pieces. 'Tis no mere myth that from the Archbeast's eye the Shimmer Pool emerged, the sole means of freedom from this land. Ah, okay, well that might explain why this is not a thing that was happening before the scribes got together down here. So damn, we just walked directly into his giant eye, which is sitting there and for some reason shoots you into a nearby waterfall? It's like some Sonic the Hedgehog stuff. How very crafty of our muzzled friend Jomuor, that one quite so diminutive as he did manage to prevail against the hive titan called Biolanthius. Despoiler of the valley, Biolanthius did fall at last into a deadly trap, which doubtless he deserved. Crushed under the weight of 16,000 tons of beetle dung. Wow. That's, it's like a dung ball, like a dung beetle would roll. Okay. Yes. Crushed under the weight of 16,000 tons of beetle dung he was. Though how our Jomuor gathered all the stuff only to send it crashing down, he has refused to say. From the hive titan flowed a fresh, rejuvenating spring, which gladdens up that valley's desolation quite a bit. As for Jomuor, why, he and his legendary... I'm sorry, does that say Pawblade? Jawblade. Set a most impressive mark of valor, to which this one aspires. Impressive work, Jomuor. What could a Pawblade even be, right? You'd have to tape it on there or something. Doubtless you have seen Black Basin, whose seething fissures yet spew noxious flame and vapor at the stars. Then you have seen the remnants of the wrath of DOLNIS, also called the LOCKET? For within himself he held the fires and the rage which shaped this very land. Right, but the LOCKET, though. Like, a lot of things hold other things within them, and whatever, it's fine. The Ash Titan, he did threaten to devour us as we delved deeper in the reaches of the downside, till we at last outsmarted him. Quenched his flames we did, when we lured an inauspicious storm his way. And so, whilst the Ash Titan has fled, the sopping coward, we can see his handiwork remains. The blackened crags forever shall bespeak the danger which he posed. A lot of these are somewhat thinner on detail than I was hoping. If this one is to be honest, he nary expected his high-minded friend Lew Sklorian ever to raise arms. And yet, 'twas Sklorian alone who toppled the Root Titan, which befouled the serenity of Wakingwood. Sklorian he brought to bear the might of his entire family of willful saps, contained within his ancient gnarled staff. Soon did the poisoned soil of limbless Erzek begin to dissipate. The Root Titan cried out a deafening last cry, and withered to a speck. Erzek yet lives, a husk, a single foul seed, still rotting where once something mighty stood. Sklorian, in his mercy, deigned that the surrounding woods ought to grow bold and strong, by casting off the influence of Erzek, not by forgetting him. Seems dangerous to leave him alive, but I suppose the scribes know some things that we don't, and also I doubt I'm getting, like, the entire story here. A warrior of surpassing strength, that Golathanian. Single-handedly he slew the serpent titan Gandroth, which envenomed downside prairies' verdant plains. Master General Golathanian, he was undeterred by Lord Gandroth's myriad attacks. His lashing tail, it hurled rocks the shape of swords, and thrice as sharp. His eyes reduced brave folk to mewling babes. Say nothing of his 2d8 claw attacks. But Golathanian stood tall and brandished his tower shield and sent Lord Gandroth's fury back into his monstrous countenance. Now Lord Gandroth takes the shape of a stone bridge, conspicuous, and now as well you know the full unguarded truth about his fearsome past, and Golathanian's glory. In all of this one's conquests, never has the Underking confronted such a foe as that sea titan Plurnus. That grand and hideous wench presented nigh inestimable peril for whomever sailed or swam the downside sea. Tales of her monstrosity long spread across the world. The Underking was undeterred. Nay, this one made it his life's mission to give her recompense. Emboldened, having felled her cousin Indriga, he drew her out of hiding and then sailed the remains of Dazraban, the doomed ship, with its sharpened prow straight through her heart. Huzzah! The catastrophic detonation which ensued left no surviving witnesses, save one. The Underking survives to speak of it, and write of it, which he shall do, repeatedly. Well, you know, at least he's aware of it. Listen, I'm never going to stop bragging about this. Everybody should know that. The tempests ravaging the downside are the handiwork of the time-singer Harn, known as the Sky Titan. The furious elements, they are his troubled dreams, manifested in this troubled land. We, the Eight, we sought to cure him of his ailment, for his unrelenting and unpleasant dreams had long become our treacherous reality. One night we drew him toward the Rite of Flame, a stratagem of Salium Mur's design. There he was stricken by the stars, and dazed, and overcome by their eternal shining glory. The Sky Titan thus bonded with the sky. The tempests which remain, they are but lasting traces of his waking dream. The foul name of the Star Titan is written here but once. Do not invoke it, lest you aid its reawakening. It sups upon despair and fear and doubt, and lands such as our own. Again, pretty Lovecraftian there. Or actually, you know what? I don't know Is that Lovecraftian, or is that more of an element of modern-day adaptations of Lovecraftian themes? Because that kind of stuff is certainly present in, say... this is an embarrassing place to go. I should probably be better read than I am. But, like, World of Warcraft, you know, the way that Cthulhu and Isharge, I think, are depicted. I'm not sure if it's the case in the actual Lovecraft stories that slumbering elder gods are fed off of negative emotion. I'm trying to remember Mountains of Madness. Anyway. To press on, 'twas our mighty mistress Melith, which tracked the astral-born monstrosity within its loathsome pit, where it lay nursing wounds sustained from traveling across the stars in search of simple prey. The wicked astral-born could drive a lesser creature to the brink of sanity with a mere passing glance, but not Melith. She cast upon the fiend 100 words of binding, each one more binding than the last. With the creature's incandescent skin, we bound this book, and bound ourselves unto the stars. The book is made out of Islak? That seems like a terrible idea. I mean, I guess she must have thought it was safe enough. Without warning, from the cinders and the seething rock that gushed forth from the sea and soil at the foot of Black Basin, rose the mare titan, Zilvius. She broke the land beneath her burning hooves, whinnying vengeance upon those who thwarted DOLNIS. We, the 8, we were divided then, and blinded by the smoke and heat and thunder. But for the grace of Mother Triesta Tithys, all would have been lost. With unswerving concentration did Saint Triesta then invoke the old enchantments inscribed upon the holy scepter which she bore. The land burst into starlight, rending Zilvius in twain. Her visage now strikes fear into the hearts of her foul kind, not ours. Why did Triesta have this scepter? Saint Triesta. I wonder if we're going to get more background on the scribes themselves. Well known is the treachery of the rope caller, who conspired against the Emperor of Sar and set in motion the Empire's collapse. The knave did journey to the downside after us. Our paths they never crossed, though he did meet his end. He wore the tattered mantle, wrought by the first Empress and worn in every generation hence. The living mantle whispered wisdom in its wearer's ear, but in the downside it cried out instead in protest. When the rope collar retreated to his horrid isle far at sea, the mantle gained new life, conjoining with the native imps. The imp titan was born, and grasped then the rope collar in its first and last embrace. Much can be learned of bravery from the tale of Haub the Swallow, the imp who alone felled the muscular and altogether terrifying bone titan called Shaxx Six Shoulders. Six Shoulders sat listless, his appalling frame refusing to be budged. None dared approach the withered fiend, whose plague had spread half-across the valley floor. Undeterred, Haub sprang into action, whilst we but watched. The little one, he flew into the gaping maw of Shaxx and lodged himself inside the monster's throat. Shaxx began then to cough and cough and cough until the valley shook. Six Shoulders breathed his last and fell, period. His putrid flesh then fizzled and was gone. Yet our imp friend remained. Our friend imp remained. I think I had read that one before. That certainly seems familiar. Obviously, we did use his Titan Star several times. Okay, a little bit more about the rites themselves. In the words of Solium Mur, the last of his name. Something tells me that this is an important chapter. By the way, this chapter we were not missing any pages from. With these blackened nails do I hereby inscribe the rites of flame. The bylaws shall be written here in full. We, the 8, decree the rites a test of one's true worth in body, mind, and spirit. Now, until the stars abandon us, this shall be the binding law within the downside. Seems a little presumptuous to decide that you can just declare that. Those deemed worthy in the rites are to regain their freedom from the downside and return from whence they came. Exiles shall conduct the rites as one of 9 triumvirates, and look toward the stars for guidance on their path. Exiles shall bear this book as status. 9 triumvirates. Is that right? The essential structure of a rite shall be as follows. Where chosen by the stars within the dark of night shall two triumvirates stand in opposition, far enough afield, beside their consecrated pyres, symbolizing their resolve. In each triumvirate the three shall act as one, to demonstrate their trust in one another, not just in themselves. Triumvirates shall endeavor to extinguish the pyre of their adversary, whose flames are only to be staunched through a celestial orb descended from the stars. Whosoever pyre remains burning shall prevail. The triumvirates are to disperse. Whosoever's, I imagine? Pretty straightforward, I suppose. I mean, it seems to me the structure of the rites... Okay, here's my thing. I've been operating, and I don't know if I've said this out loud at any point, but I've been operating under the assumption that the structure of the rites is largely theater, unnecessary, that the rites themselves don't really have anything to do with the passage from the downside back to the Commonwealth. It's just, it's religious ritual. It's an observance, the point of which is the observance. I hope that will be clarified, that I'll be proven wrong or right here in this chapter. We, the Eight, have seen the turning of the stars from now until the ending of our age. Heed their guidance, and ours. The stars take many cyclic turns. The rites commence at their behest, upon celestial landmarks where the downside's greater titans fell before the heavens. Bearing this the book bestowed on your triumvirate. They punctuate things differently in the downside than I'm used to. You, the reader, shall perceive under which stars you are to congregate. Follow where they lead, as your adversaries shall. If either of you fails to appear, then neither of you walks the path. Whether you prevail or you fail, from that point the stars shall guide you on. If either of you fails to appear, then neither of you walks the path. That's interesting. We played in a rite where the other team failed to appear, and we still did all the stuff. Like, I still had to actually go put the orb in their pyre, even though they didn't show up and there wasn't actually a rite. The rite shall not commence unless the necessary preparations are complete at a celestial landmark, ere the stars align. Exiles shall conduct the rites bearing this book, of which there are but 40 copies, each bound in astral hide. Yeah, I would imagine that it's not easy to make new ones, given what it's made of. Exiles shall wear the sacred raiments, fashioned in our likeness at the summit of Mount Elodiel. Their identities are to be concealed, for they shall represent us all. Exiles shall set a metal signature for their pyre, and consecrate the grounds, using the words, "The 8 scribes gave their freedoms, that we may yet have ours." The heavens shall respond when all is set. But it's not really the heavens that respond, right? It's the Archbishop. I don't know. I will admit that I have a tendency, maybe tendency is not the right word, a desire to sort of see the magical things in stories like this as artifice that must be underpinned by something more real. But, I mean, we know there's magic in this world. There's no reason it can't be the thing they say it is. During the rite, each triumvirate shall act as one, unerringly and without question. The disobedient shall suffer banishment, or permanent expulsion. Exiles shall move as of a single mind, to demonstrate their faith, and recognize that they, as we the 8, cannot prevail alone. Their worth shall be determined both by their actions and their peers. Triumvirates lacking experience in this may designate a reader, whose focus on this book may help the others to coordinate. However, only those who shall conduct the rites firsthand shall walk the path toward enlightenment, and become eligible to regain their freedom. At the appointed time, at the aligning of the stars, the heavens shall rain down upon the ground sufficiently prepared, and thus the 2 opposing pyres shall be set ablaze. Thus shall commence the rite. So, like, this is one of the things that if it's true, would make it obviously the case that there is something greater going on here. But I'm thinking back to, like, the rite we did against Manly Tinderstuff. Did the stars, did the scribes really want Manly to win that badly? Or was it the Archbishop with his thumb on the scales, right? If it's the Archbishop on the other side doing all this stuff, I think what we witnessed in the Manly Tinderstuff match makes a lot more sense. Because that would be right after Wulfred was revealed, right? That would be right after the Brighton became clear on the fact that I had no intention of following in his footsteps. So I could see the sudden burst of health to Manly's Pyre being Brighton, the Archbishop, saying to us, no, you cannot come, you cannot return. Triumvirates are to protect their pyres as they would their lifeblood. Lifeblood itself is never to be shed, before, during, or after any rite, lest the disobeyer suffer permanent expulsion. Exile is injury enough. The rite is an act of mercy. Fear not the purifying flame. Plunge into it headlong and without fear, for you shall be protected by the stars themselves. Seek freedom in the flame. No, that's not good life advice. Exiles bearing the raiments and this book reveal their hidden inner aura in the color of their flame. The aura is the exile's solitary weapon in the rites. Should one's adversary cross one's aura, the adversary shall be banished. Banishment is fleeting nonetheless. Seek the pyre's light, and thus make your return. The exile's presence shapes the aura. Exiles gain greater auras while standing side by side with their triumvirates, for we gain strength together. Exiles may cast their aura through sheer force of focus on this book. As the two flames are lit, so shall the celestial orb fall from the heavens. But one such orb shall be availed by the stars, requiring triumvirates to vie for it. Its cosmic connection to the flames, the raiments, and this book bestows the necessary qualities for its bearer to prevail. Effortlessly sails the orb between the three in a triumvirate. It seeks the grasp of whosoever acts among the three. Once grasped, the orb shall draw within it all the bearer's aura, fueled by the triumvirate's own flame. It is to be cast into the flame, to seek its freedom, because that's what you do in a big fire. In each rite we gain enlightenment, whether we prevail or we fail. Indeed, through failure do we tend to learn the most valued lessons, provided we survive. None among us have prevailed without end. Exiles who walk the path toward enlightenment shall, at times, be struck by an epiphany and achieve mastery in some respect. Choose well amongst these blessings we bestow. Thus you may yet achieve your potential and surpass your adversaries. Whenever you prevail, your triumvirate earns favor. In time, the triumvirate with the most favor shall be summoned to the liberation rite to earn a chance at freedom. Then the cycle shall begin anew. I know I don't intend to talk about final thoughts type stuff here, but I do want to mention that I actually really appreciate it when games attempt to create some kind of diegetic explanation for their mechanics. Which is not to say that I have a problem with games being gamey for the sake of providing, a good experience for the player, but I like it when they at least put forth a little bit of effort on this score. The liberation rite takes place upon the fall of Solium, under a blooded moon, witnessed by the heralds from the stars. There the most favored triumvirate shall confront the one which we appoint. These two triumvirates first shall pass through Scribe's Gate, where their worth shall be assessed under the stars. Only the most enlightened exiles within each triumvirate may be anointed for a chance at freedom. Two of their companions shall support them whilst they strive. The anointed champion of the triumvirate which prevails then shall plunge into the shimmer pool and return in glory. That did not explain quite as much of the stuff behind the rituals as I was hoping. Okay, the 9 triumvirates. So hold on a second. We were told that there were 40 copies of the book. 9 triumvirates is the wrong number, right? Even if we assume that you need one book for each of the active competitors, and one book for the team's reader, should they have one, That's only 36. So are the other 4 books like the books that the true Nightwings had? Why would the scribes create 4 extra books to allow for that possibility, you know? That seems odd. At first, I found it much too... Oh, sorry. This is a new chapter. These are the words of Haub the Swallow, who apparently could write. No offense, Tizo, it just seems like a lot for an imp. At first, I found it much too difficult to read, much less to write, even to grasp the quill. But the Horned One, Myr, implored me. He said this is the greatest gift that he could give me in return. In return for what? I asked. In return for his life, he said. But I did not save your life, I said. You did, he said. We fight about this still. Myr is stubborn, more than I. Now, herein and by his leave, I chronicle the 9 triumvirates. For I am of this land, unlike the rest who wish to leave. We knew not everyone could leave who wanted. Seldom would the opportunity arise. Thus did we organize those striving for the chance into 9 sets of 3. The accusers formed under Golathanian. He is a big man. He values justice, loyalty, steadfastness. Golathanian, he says that the accusers take their name from one of his most accomplished legions, from his former military days. All among them, in fact, served the Master General at one time. They represent the stoutest-hearted men and women of the Empire, who held true to Myr and Golathanian to the end. The golden colors of their raiments are reminiscent of their old shining armor, is his claim. Ever shall they seek out those with the truest spirits and the strongest sense of purpose to replenish their ranks. The Fate united under Manymane, the Alpha Chief. He is brash, but follows his traditions. He prizes faith, discipline, and honor, qualities he seems to lack at first. He formed the Fate under the precepts of olden bylaws of his 4-legged ancestors. They believed in a certain natural order in the way of things. Manymane wanted for the Fate to likewise show respect. Initially, he only chose from other curs. He, however, urged the Fate to replenish their numbers from any race or ethnic group thus willing. Thus shall they anticipate what is to come, with open eyes and minds, and never frown upon what is in store for them. Almer was not doing a great job of upholding those ideals. I will say, Almer is the one I most wish we had managed to allow free, from the people of the other teams. Like, I think Ignarius probably should have been freed, and Almer probably should have been freed. I did a bad thing letting across the enemies that I did. I assume that had the Fate won, it would have been Almer who went, and not Dalbert. Right? It would have to be. I have to imagine that's what Dalbert would force to be the case. I, myself, Haub, did form the dissidents, under this simple tenet: those who do not belong, belong. The other scribes, some of them showed, at first, reluctance to allow an imp and one accursed, to designate one of the 9 triumvirates, but Myr, the Horned One, stubborn as he was, stood by my side. In time they came to understand, for I remained, as ever, at their side, a living bit of proof of their absurdity. The dissidents are an extension of my oddity. Those who do not adhere, they are not to be discarded, underestimated, or dismissed. They are as necessary as are those against whom they rebel. So let's see here. We were missing this page. The Withdrawn did spawn forth from the wild witch Melith, in whose vigilant pursuit of the unknown and the unknowable I always felt a certain kinship. Whether the Withdrawn were Melith's kin by blood or merely worshippers, we trusted one another not to ask or care. What mattered was that Melith chose the most audacious minds, who stopped at nothing short of the impossible. Though ever distant, the Withdrawn revealed to us such truths about the land which long lay hidden, even to one such as I. Their knowledge ever waking into newfound depths of consciousness, they lead us all to better know ourselves. So I'm assuming the fact that we're missing this page means that the threshold for getting a team's page is that you have to, like, play them 3 times or maybe beat them twice. Because we beat Malith once and then we lost to her in the Liberation Rite, and I believe that's all the contact we had. Or not Malith, we beat Udmilda's team and then lost to her. The Pyre Hearts all follow in the path forged by the Underking Orus, whose many mighty deeds exceed the smallish stature that somehow contained him. His is the most spirited triumvirate, their courage unfaltering, their hearts full. They live always with vigor, and perhaps they die with it as well. They are the Underking's own kind, as at home above the sea as in it, never ceasing, ever longing, as they do, for something more. The Underking chose wisely for these qualities, and teaches that a life devoid of passion is a life devoid of life itself. That burning passion is the fuel that drives the Pyre Hearts, and, in turn, us all. The Essence. So the Essence is another page that we were missing, which I think keeps the theory, right? Because I believe what happened with the Essence is that we beat them and then lost to them. Or maybe... did I lose them twice? No. Manly Tinderstuff is the only one who beat us prior to the Liberation Rites running, I think. Is that right? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The winged members of the Essence, each chosen by the matriarch Triesta Tithys, are living exemplars of liberty and piety. Would that my wings could be thus. Once, you of course must know, we all had wings. It is said the men and women of the Empire relinquished them. Relinquished them. Theirs. Theirs is what that is. Boy, that sure looks like an M, doesn't it? Drawn in by earthly matters as they were. But the harps, such as Triesta, held tight the liberty their plumage could afford. These divergent paths did cause a share of differences between the winged and the wingless over time. But here in this land our purposes are shared, our goals united. That, then, is the Essence. That is who they are, and what, and why. No, but we did have the page on the Chastity, and we didn't play the Chastity very much, or do very well against them. Those bearing the name the Chastity all count themselves disciples of Liu Sklorian, the Hundred Minds, known firstly for his wisdom, but also cherished for his modesty, integrity, and kinship. Sklorian's priority in forming his triumvirate was to instill in all his subjects a deep-seated deference and respect for the rules governing the liberation cycle. The cycle of the rites needs to be respected to be understood, and needs to be understood to be respected, Sklorian said. Thus, the Chastity are emissaries of the cycle. Should they earn back their liberty, then they shall spread enlightenment itself, and all of us shall grow. Get it? 'Cause they're trees. Myr, the Horned One, formed the Tempers upon his own ideals. Ingrained in this triumvirate are basic truths about the dual roles of strength and gentleness. The Horned One, he has had a dualistic nature for as long as he and I consider each a friend. The stories I am told about Myr's youth describe no one I know. All of us are capable of more. I once was an imp that could not write. Myr once was a man that could not think. The Tempers once were ordinary folk. Now they rise to greatness, always striving, never overreaching. They are not like Myr himself. Rather, they are what Myr wished he could be. What is a life without an adversary? If not for forces that conspire against the will, life would be devoid of its innateness, the desire to overcome. Thus, when we, the 8, at last each fashioned a triumvirate based on our own ideals, we realized a void still needed to be filled, as the night sky needs moonlight. We 8 were united. Our triumvirates shared our affection. They needed us to set them all against a common foe. Thus did we form the Nightwings, a triumvirate envisioned to exceed them all, both through means mortal and divine, and give an undue favor in each turning of the cycle. They are the adversary we all face. The Beyonders. Oh, wait a second. Are the Beyonders the keeper of the other books? Would the Beyonders need actual books given that they're all trapped in the crystal? To call the Beyonders a triumvirate is to stain the others' efforts, yet I am beholden to describe them here. A pack of bandits loosely organized under the Sisters of the Arch. They traveled all this way into my land to take the Horned One's life, to kill my friend, Myr. We thwarted them. We had them at our mercy. Mercy had become imperative to Myr. We spared their lives, but banished them to darkness, far beyond these lands. Now and forever the Beyonders cling to a beholden duty to confront the true triumvirates whenever they so choose, so that whenever the true triumvirates clash, it shall be to their fullest extent. We did not have this page. Oh, you know what I bet? I bet that we would have gotten this page if I had ever completed a full practice rite, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. I think I started one just to check out the saluting functionality, and then ended it early. So I bet if we had completed a practice rite, that's how we would have unlocked this. Alright, final chapter. In the words of Triesta Tithys, the Blessed-born, we, the Eight, assembled here together in the downside, and we gave our freedom so that you may yet have yours. It is an exchange we have not lightly made. It is my charge to ensure that you, should you regain your freedom, first off recognize its qualities, and also use it wisely. You do not need a pair of wings in order to be free. My own wings, I once thought that they could take me anywhere, and then they took me here where I am bound. It is your charge to be free, and not to make the same mistakes. Spring from here, and learn from what we did, and build a new and great society, a free society, with wings spread wide for everyone. Mercy is the beating heart of a truly free society. Mercy even for the perpetrators of the darkest deeds. As our liege Solium Myr drifted in an ocean of regret, he found there mercy, or rather it found him, and it saved his life. Mercy, freedom, they are intertwined. A society which raises a clenched fist against its own shall follow the doomed path of the Empire of Sar. Ours shall be a merciful society. May the perpetrators of the darkest deeds be sent to join us here, where they may learn as we have. Mercy shall engender union among all our different kind. We shall stand shoulder to shoulder, equals in the same society. It's interesting that the On Mercy page... So, like, this star is representative of the liberation, right? But when I see it, what I immediately think of is the face of the Archjustice. Mercy means different things to different people in different times, obviously. Such is the case that what the scribes viewed as a revolutionary act of mercy was viewed by Volfred's revolution as draconian to the point of not being able to stand it anymore. Each one of us within the Eight, besides the Imp Haub, we would have perished in the downside had we not found each other, and, together, formed our union. Here in the downside all are bound, but that which binds us here does have some latitude. We chose the bond of kinship. Our exile took precedence over our differences. The Empire, which had subjugated all our kind into a tense alliance, shall give way to a society in which our differences are paramount. There may you embrace your ancient cultures, whilst jointly forming a great culture all its own. Next to mercy, it is kinship that shall form the bedrock of our commonwealth. Right, so the book is sort of a blueprint for the commonwealth, in addition to a history. The fallen Empire of Sar was ruled according to an ancient bloodline thought to be infallible. Our society shall instead be by those who earn the privilege. We, the Eight, we cannot bear the burden of determining your worth. It shall be determined by your peers and by you yourself. We shall provide a framing through the rites to put you to the test against yourselves, against your kin, against your adversaries. The downside cannot let us all go free. Thus, freedom to the worthy. But see, in the devising of the test, in the creation of the rules and the framing, they do determine what it is we're judged on. They are judging us. They're just doing it through a layer of indirections. They don't have to feel bad about it. I have a lot of thoughts about game narrative. Well, hold on. This is all stuff that'll come later. We'll talk about it next video. As to the worthy, your true calling then begins, as you return to a society which longs to learn the wisdom you have gained along your path. The worthy shall lead. This book cannot accompany you if you should earn your freedom. It is to remain here for your successors, for it is bound together inextricably with us. There is no sorcery, however, to prohibit you from spreading forth its teachings. We charge you to go forth and share what you have learned along your path. Reveal not the rites themselves, nor the existence of this book. Transcend its bounded limitations, for it cannot be transcribed. Any such attempts shall fail. Beware of those who would dare to read it on the other side. Under their guise of seeking wisdom may yet lurk a much darker desire to undo that which we strive to do. Reader, though you shall always bear a burden, it is much lighter than the burden of a lonesome exile. Go forth and become free. Then join with others such as you and lead with mercy, continuing to demonstrate your worth, and knowing that the Empire's fall formed the foundation of our Commonwealth. You shall cease to be a reader and become a voice both to the free and to your successors here, who shall take up this book when you no longer need it. The cycle of the rites shall see to it that you and others like you shall be liberated, ere the coming of another age. May the stars shine ever brightly on us all. So I think it's probably worth noting here, on the final page of the real chapters, it's the harp who really laid out the idea of the Commonwealth and what its rules should be based on. Probably the people ruling the Commonwealth at this time would not take kindly to that knowledge. The afterword, a list of terms which you may wish to know. As an exile of the downside, a reader of this book, and a conductor of the rites, you are engaged now in a cycle which has lasted since the dawn of this age. Here, within this part of the book, is offered summary of all key figures, locales, terms, and astral phenomena which you shall encounter, either first-hand or in passing, on your path. To know the history of the downside and the rites is to prepare yourself to walk the path toward enlightenment, and then to liberty itself. Should you be free again, remember, reveal not the rites themselves, nor the existence of this book. Rights terms. I mean, this is just... we don't have to read this. This is just a glossary, sort of. I'm just scanning these real quick to see if there's anything terribly interesting in them. It doesn't look like it. This might be more interesting, perhaps. The 8 Scribes. Golgol Athenian, known as the Master General and the Nomad Scribe, he wields the legendary tower shield Oath-Taker. Haub the Swallow, known as the Accursed and the Imp Scribe, he possesses the legendary Wings of Misfortune. Demure Manymane, known as the Alpha Chief and the Cur Scribe, he wields the legendary Jawblade Kneebender. Leus Glorian, known as 100 Minds and the Sap Scribe, he wields the legendary staff, the Genealogy of Sklorian. Strange name for a staff. I guess I wouldn't think it terribly weird if, like, some fantasy character's magic sword was named, like, the Legacy of family name, so just genealogy is an odd word in the context. Molten Malith, known as the Wild Witch and the Crone Scribe, she wields the legendary lantern Flame of the First Hag. Solium Mur, known as the Last of his Name and the Demon Scribe, he possesses the legendary Black Nails of the Fallen Emperor. Triesta Tithys, known as the Blessed Born and the Harp Scribe, she wields the Holy Scepter of the Saurian Empire. Under King Orus, known as the Sea Sojourner and the Worm Scribe, he wears the legendary Bladed Mail Silverfish. Ew. It's interesting, the harp scribe, the worm scribe, the curse scribe, these sort of parallel the appellations that they gave to the Titans. I don't know, there's probably nothing meaningful there, just... the accusers, triumvirate formed by the nomad Golgol Athenian, founded on justice and loyalty, sigil, a shattered scale. The Beyonders, eternally expelled, not a true triumvirate, sigil, a forked star. The Chastity, triumvirate formed by the sap, Leus Glorian, founded on integrity and modesty, sigil, bloomflower. The Dissidents, formed by the Imp the Swallow, founded on difference and conviction, sigil, a leering maw. Essence, formed by the harp Saint Trieste Tithys, founded on liberty and piety, sigil, an empress tear. The Fate, triumvirate formed by the courage of your many mane, founded on faith and honor, sigil, an awakened eye. So wait a second, which, oh, the Dissidents. I was trying to remember which triumvirate was Barker's, but it's the Dissidents, right? That makes sense. I was just thinking, Barker doesn't really fit a lot of these descriptions. The Nightwings, triumvirate formed by all 8 scribes, adversary against whom all others are judged. The sigil is a cresting moon. The Pyre Hearts, yeah, I mean, these are all pretty straightforward. I was hoping that there would be a little bit more editorializing, basically. Yeah, this is all stuff that we basically know. If you're really into reading all of it, of course, leave it up here long enough for you to pause it at least. We know about the downside regions, we know about the celestial landmarks, and the greater titans that created them. He who shall not be named, the Astral Lord. Boy, I sure do feel like I said his name a lot over the course of the game. Hey, the stars. Oh, that's right. Everybody has an astral sign that's noted on their profile. I wonder whether these actually fit them. That's something I'll do a little research on before the final thoughts video. And that's it. That's the last page. All right. Well, that ended up being much longer than I thought it was going to be. But I'm glad we did it. And you can see here, early game Rookie still having his mustache. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. I hope anybody who sat through all that actually enjoyed it. Come back next time. It probably won't be tomorrow, but a few days hence, ere too long, my friends, I will have my final thoughts organized, I hope. And we'll see you then.